On this week's episode, I am going to be knitting some shorty socks because it's shorty sock season. It's warming up outside, spring is here, and I am ready for summer adventures, and summer adventures mean shorty socks. Shorty socks are some of my favorite socks to knit. It is literally instant gratification. Those things fly off the needles, and then before you know it, you've got a pair of socks, like within a day or two. The socks that I want to knit this week are going to be faded because I love knitting faded socks. I think they look really cool, and it's a great way to use up yarn in your stash that's just been sitting around that you want to get rid of because it causes you enormous stress to have just random balls of half-used yarn laying around, or at least it does for me. So all of that and more coming up. All right, it's good to be back again. A lot has changed since you last saw me. I got bangs. I have bangrette. I wish I had not gotten the bangs. Too late. Now I've got to wait for them to grow out. I am glad I tried it. I've been thinking about bangs for many years and finally decided, I don't know, I was just feeling just loosey-goosey the other day when I went to get a haircut. I was like, you know what? Let's do bangs. Let's give this a shot. And so we did. I do think they look good. I like the look of the bangs. I just don't like how bangs kind of control your life. Like, I'm not in charge of myself anymore. The bangs are in charge. Like, when I get out of the shower, I have to immediately do something with them because if they just dry naturally, horrible things happen. At least they do for me because I have like wavy / curly hair. When the wind blows, they get poofy. It's just, oh man. And it's just, I don't know. I don't like the feel. I can feel them like right there, just kind of like, like on my eyelids. And I don't like that feeling. I didn't know that I didn't like the feeling of hair on my forehead until I like cut my hair in such a way that it just kind of hung out on my forehead. So not a fan of bangs. Major bangrette. Definitely going to be growing them out as quickly as I can, and until then going to be dying a little inside every day because I have bangs that I don't want. But I do think they look good. I'm glad that I tried it, got it out of my system, and now I know I'm not a bangs person. So yeah, I also got contacts. I don't know what is happening. I guess I've decided that now that I'm 43, I'm just ready to like make an effort with my appearance. I go through phases where I'm like, I care how I look, and so I'll put on makeup and like dress a little nicer, and then I'll enter more of a feral phase where I just don't care, and so I just wake up, take a shower, and go. Don't do anything to my hair, don't do makeup, t-shirt, shorts, that's all I do. And I'm fine with both. I just kind of go with it. So I guess right now we're in a phase where I kind of care, and so I'm getting contacts, braces, bangs, all the things. This week, we are going to be knitting shorty socks. It is shorty sock season, of which I am so excited about because that means the weather's getting warm. That means it's time for extremely portable projects while we go on spring and summer adventures. And there is nothing I love better than knitting shorty socks because, as I mentioned, they fly off the needles so quick. It is an instant gratification project. No sooner do you start on the leg than you're done with the leg because the leg is like this big. So I'm very excited. My goal this week is to knit 3 pair of shorty socks. We will see if I can actually do that. As we know, I set very lofty goals for myself because I constantly overestimate how quickly I can knit, but I'm going to give it my best shot. I am going to be doing faded shorty socks this week. I love faded socks. I think they look cool. They're fun. It makes the knitting exciting because you're always looking forward to blending in that next color. And it just seems like they go faster and they just look so cool. They're beautiful. But more importantly, as you know, I've been kind of on a mission to try and use more of my speckled and variegated yarn stash. I've got a lot of it because back in like 2020, 2021, I just sort of went on a spree of like seeing amazing yarn on Instagram and then buying it because, you know, I had started this business. And so I was like, well, I need supplies. And so I bought a lot of speckled yarn, and I am more of a tonals person, it turns out. I like knitting with tonals and solids the most. That's what I reach for time and time again. So I have all these like half-used balls of speckled yarn, lots of full skeins, and I want to use them. So faded socks are a great opportunity to make a dent in your stash of leftover speckled and variegated yarns, or to wind up a new skein of a yarn that's been sitting there for a while that you don't know what to do with. So I'm going to show you how I knit faded socks. I'm going to show you how I select colors to pair together, and then we're going to knit some cute socks. I'm going to start off by showing you the first color pairing I have selected for this first pair of socks. So this one's kind of neutral, actually. I started off with some neutral speckles, and then we're going to go into a bright color. This is my first faded pairing. We're going to start with this guy. We're going to move into this yarn, which is Poppy by Hedgehog Fibers, and then move into this yellow. Have no idea what it is. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that in a past life, I was not very good at saving yarn labels. I have since made an effort to do better about that. Unfortunately, I haven't wound any new skeins of yarn in a while, so I haven't got to put my new system in place yet. This feels very much like we are excited about spring. We are excited about summer right around the corner. We are ready. We are ready for bright colors, good times, warm sunshine. So I'm very excited about this color pairing. These yarns are for the most part speckled, not variegated. This yellow definitely has some variegation, but these two are primarily just speckled yarns. I really love working with speckled yarns the most whenever I knit faded socks. The reason for that being, I feel like speckles fade and blend better, more seamlessly than do variegated yarns. I feel like you kind of end up with some lines whenever you're blending in variegated yarns. Not always, but a lot of the time. So I tend to gravitate more towards speckled as opposed to variegated when I'm knitting a fade. But this week I do want to incorporate both because, like I said, I'm trying to make a dent in my stash. So we'll see how that goes. I have actually already casted this on because I was excited to start last night. It was too dark to film, but I thought, I don't care. I want to get started. So here's where we're at. So far, we've got this little cuff. It's looking good. It's a little bit variegated. It's got varying kind of chunks of like gray and then like a cream, like an off-white with the speckles. So, I mean, it's a little bit variegated. We've got some variegation. It's just subtle. But we're starting here, and I have finished the leg. This is it. I am ready to start the heel flap. This is what is so great about shorty socks. So I am actually going to put the instructions for how to knit these socks in the description below the video. It's just a basic shorty sock. So I'm going to put the pattern in the description so that you can follow along and knit these socks as well if you want to. It's a very simple sock, and I am going to explain how I fade. All of this information can also be found in my book, The Sock Project. I've got a whole chapter on basic sock recipes in case you want to do a different basic sock for your shorty. And I've got a whole chapter on fading and how I fade, how I select colors. It goes really in depth. Really handy reference to have in your library. So if you want to check my book out, there'll be a link to that in the description below the video, as well as this pattern and these instructions so that you can knit along and we can all have fun faded shorty socks for summer. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on the heel, and then I'll be back to check in when I'm ready to start blending in my next color. In the meantime, again, if you want to cast on as well, check the description below the video for all those instructions.
Today we break away, forget our fear of what comes after. Hold on for better days. Let our past begin to shatter. Days like these, we can see the way to live out a new chapter. day.
All right, while I am finishing up that heel, I want to talk a little about color selection when you're putting together a fade. I kind of like my fades to be subtle. I don't like going from a color that is like really different. You can see these two. If you were to try and blend these two colors, you would definitely have distinct lines where you're blending them in. If that is your aesthetic and you love how that looks, go for it. This is just me kind of talking about how I like to do it and what looks good to my eye. So I do not like going from super light to super saturated or rich or dark. I just don't think that the blend is as subtle, and I like it to have kind of an ombre effect where the blend is not super noticeable. So I tend to choose colors that are very similar to one another and that we've got new colors coming in, but then there's also colors that are very similar to the one I used before. So I would start with this really pretty peach. It's got some light speckling in it. I would then blend in this kind of peachy yellow. It's got some different colors coming into the chat. And then finally, I would end up with this, where it's got some of those same peachy tones, but we're introducing even more colors. I think these three would blend really, really well together. This would be an example of going from light to dark. We've got the colors on the end. I would start with this very light color with a lot of speckling, and I would end up with this. These are obviously very different from one another, but this middle color bridges the gap. So this is kind of how I go from light to dark. There's always a color in the middle that kind of bridges the difference between the two. But again, if I were to try and blend these two next to each other, there would definitely be distinct lines, and I don't like super distinct lines. So having this color in the middle kind of helps prevent those lines. This is absolutely a variegated yarn. This is also variegated, although it's kind of more subtle. And to me, this is just speckled. So you can blend speckled yarns together with variegated yarn. The key really is to find colors that are similar to continue building your fade. I also tend to choose colors that are in the same family. So like these three yarns have a lot of minty greens and purples and creams in them with little pops of other things. But for the most part, we've got kind of the same color story going on. And I think that creates a really beautiful, subtle blend and fade. This would actually be amazing. I wish that I had done this. I really like this one. Here's one where I used blues. This is my, notice again, the light color and the dark color are very different. And if I were to try to blend these together, you would see very distinct lines. But we add in our bridge color, and that's gonna make that blending a lot more subtle. So we're starting out with a lot of blues, some yellows, some oranges, and then we start blending in more blues, but we introduce some darker speckling. And then of course, this particular skein has a lot of dark colors in it, but those three blend really, really nicely together. Finally, this one, again, we're starting light, mid, and then this one's very saturated and rich. We're actually starting with colors that are kind of peachy. We've got a little bit of green, some blues. We introduce this as our bridge color. It's also got some peachy tones in there, a lot more blue, more green, this kind of neon green, and then this, totally lots of greens, but then there's still also purples and blues and yellows. And it all just blends really, really nicely together. So that's kind of how I approach fades. Typically, I like to go from light to a mid shade to a rich, dark, saturated shade for my fade. I don't like mixing it up. I don't like going from a light shade to a saturated shade. I always like to have something in the middle that bridges between the two to make that fade more subtle. That's pretty much how I choose colors when I am putting together a fade. Okay, I have finished my heel and my gusset on this sock, and I am now at the point where I am ready to start blending in my next color. I'm going to be blending in this color next. This is Poppy from Hedgehog Fibers. No idea what this is. How I blend in yarn when I'm doing a fade. The human brain is pattern seeking. It loves to look for patterns. So I try to blend by not using a pattern, by doing it kind of random so that our brain can't zero in on it and pick out those differences in the two different yarns, like noticing where, you might have stripes. Like if you do every other row, old color, new color, old color, new color. That's a pattern. If you do every other, like if you do 2 of each one, if you do 2 new, 2 old, 2 new, 2 old, that's a pattern. So I tend to kind of break it up. I might do new, old, new, old, new, new, old, new, old, new, old, and so on. And just kind of make it more random. So it's not so much of a pattern. And in my opinion, that really helps the fade look even more blended so that you don't necessarily see a pattern of like old yarn, new yarn, old yarn, new yarn. So I will list that blending pattern below in the description of the video along with the instructions to knit these socks so that you can kind of follow that blending pattern. So now I'm going to go ahead and start blending in, and that's what I'm going to spend the rest of the evening doing. Okay, so I made a little bit of progress on my sock last night. All right, so I've blended in the second color. I'm knitting with the second color, and today I just have like no desire to knit at all. It sounds like the worst thing to do ever. Some days are like that. I wake up and I'm just like, ugh. Most days not. Most days I love to knit. For whatever reason today I'm just not feeling it. So I have been doing everything but knitting, which is bad because I'm on deadlines. I'm on a tight schedule. I really can't afford not to knit every day. But I'm going with it. It is what it is. I'm going to try to knit later. But right now I'm about to go through my clothes because I just picked up a few new things for summer and I need to get rid of some stuff that I no longer wear and donate it. So I'm going to do that instead of knitting. And then after I do that, it'll be time to pick up the kids from school. And this evening, hopefully, I will have my knitting mojo back and I'll be ready to like blend in the third color, finish these socks, and show you what they look like tomorrow. Okay, it's been a couple of days. I did finish the faded sock that I was working on. I'm going to show you that in a minute. I'm in my daughter's room right now. David's on a long conference call in the living room where I normally film, so I came in here so that I could film. Okay, so I did finish my first faded sock. Did I immediately cast on the second sock? No, I did not. I casted on a new sock, another faded sock in different colors. When I finished that faded sock, did I cast on the second sock to that sock or to the first sock I knit? No, I did not. I cast on a third faded sock in different colors. And then I ran out of time. I did knit 3 socks, not a pair out of any of them, 3 very different socks, but I still think it shows and hopefully will inspire you to knit faded shorties. And of course I did explain how I fade, and I've got the pattern for this shorty sock in the description of the video if you want to knit them, so I don't feel like I'm shorting you. I'm shorting you. I don't feel like I'm shorting you by not showing you complete shorty pairs. So without further ado, let's look at the finished single shorty faded socks that I knit this week, and let me know what you think. Oh, aren't they so beautiful? Like, I really wish that I had time to knit full pairs because I would wear the crap out of these, and I may go back and knit the second socks at some point so that I can have these as actual pairs. And wouldn't this make a cute gift for somebody? Like if you knit them a couple of pairs of shorty socks and then tied them up with a little ribbon, put them in a box. Like, they're so fast and simple to make. The only reason I didn't finish my pairs is because, again, I decided to prioritize other things this week. But let's take a close-up look. So this is the first pair that you saw me knitting. And this is the more neutral pair. I mean, it kind of starts out with some pretty neutral speckles in like grays and off-white with colorful speckles, blending into this very springy art. This is the most spring color palette. So love these kind of neutral speckles blending into the yellow. The second pair that I cast on when I should have been casting on the second sock and didn't because I was too excited to see more colors is all in pinks. We all know how much I love pink. I adore this one. This actually has 4 colors. I started off with this kind of peachy color with speckles, moved into like a moderate shade of pink with speckles, into a darker shade of pink with speckles, and then finally into a variegated skein that had oranges, pinks, and red. This sock was knit primarily with speckled yarns, and then I blended in a variegated yarn for the toe. So it is possible, absolutely, to use variegated yarns whenever you fade. I just prefer primarily speckles. And then the third, again, should have cast on the second sock to this or this. But instead I wanted to see it in blue and green. So we did a faded shorty in these beautiful blues blending into greens, and I adore this. And once again, I did kind of the same thing. I stuck with speckled yarns for the majority of the sock, and then I used a variegated yarn on the toe. And you can definitely see the lines. You know, variegated yarn on socks is going to give you stripes and lines. And so you can kind of see that on the toe. But for the most part, it's a really nice smooth blend, moving from this kind of darker shade to a little bit lighter and then going into that green toe. And then all together, it's just magic. I mean, that's just beautiful. What a great little collection of socks for the spring and summer. I mean, even just filming this, I'm like, okay, I definitely want to go back at some point and finish the second socks, because I would wear these so hard with like Tevas, Birkenstocks, tennis shoes, just padding around the house. Like, they're happy, they're cheerful, they knit up quick, and they're a great way to use up your variegated and speckled yarn leftovers, or even if you just want to wind up some skeins that have been sitting on the shelf for a while and they need to go somewhere. Oh, bangs, look. See, I have a cowlick right here, so my bangs want to separate, and then I feel like I look like Dwight Schrute. Like if I pull my hair back, you know, he has his bangs parted in the middle. All right, so now that I've shown you what they look like this, let's see what they look like on feet. That's a wrap on this week. I thoroughly enjoyed knitting my 3 faded shorty socks. Totally wish that I could have had time to knit the pairs, but I'm gonna let that go. I will at some point come back and knit the second sock so I can have the 3 pairs. Again, if you want to knit some faded shorty socks yourself, I've got my basic short sock recipe in the description below the video that I used to knit these socks. And of course, the video contained all of my tips for fading, for choosing colors for your fade. So hopefully you've got some good stuff in your stash that you can like go in and use and deplete the leftovers a little bit. You can also find links to my Ravelry store, my website, all in the description below this video. You can also find a link to sign up for my newsletter. I send a newsletter every Friday. It's got my newest, latest patterns. It's got my links to my videos, and it's got what books I'm reading, what shows I'm watching, all the fun stuff every Friday in your inbox. So if you want to sign up for that, you can do so below the video. You'll also get, as a newsletter subscriber, extra special discount codes on my newest pattern releases. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you again for the likes and the comments. I love reading your comments. They're always so funny and insightful. I love learning more about you. You can subscribe to this channel if you want to keep coming and hanging out with me every Friday when I release new videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.